Welcome back to the channel. I'm Rachel Clark with Living in Tucson. Today we're gonna go over the 7 reasons why people are leaving Tucson. Yeah, that's right. So there's been so many people and so much growth over the past few years, especially with jobs becoming able to work from home and working remote. And we've seen a lot of people choose to move to Tucson because of so many great reasons. But I went online and I was searching the reasons why people might be leaving. As a born Tucson native, I love it here. Yes, there's ways that we can definitely improve, but I've come up with 7 reasons why so many people are choosing to leave. You'll want to stay till the end because the last 2 definitely are big ones. Let's get into the video. Up first, we have terrible drivers. Now, this one actually kind of made me laugh because it definitely is true. I thought maybe just everywhere is kind of like this, but you know, that might be the case, but Tucson definitely has a good amount of not so great drivers. And that might be because, you know, they're not paying attention, texting and driving. Some, from what I read online, is either, you know, snowbirds or U of A students, but it's kind of a plethora of reasons why, you know, there might not be the best drivers. Definitely want to make sure that you're paying attention when driving because you could have people zooming in and out, or really slow drivers, or people who are trying to race to the next light. So that's definitely something that I've noticed, especially living here, and also what I just read online from a lot of people that are pointing out that Tucson has a plethora of terrible drivers. So it's key to make sure that you're paying attention while driving and just being aware of all of your surroundings here, because you definitely don't want to get in a car accident or a fender bender, but that's number 1 for the reasons people are leaving. Let's go on to number 2. Number 2 is Tucson isn't very walkable. Now that really depends on where you live and what you're walking to, but I know personally I have to use a car for getting around town and kind of a lot of my necessities. It's very rare that I am walking to a restaurant or to grocery shop. Now, if you're going to a park, sure, you can park and go to a farmer's market or something like that, but you know, it's not the most walkable place. You do and will probably need a car if you're looking to live or move here. I do know that in a lot of bigger cities, public transportation is super reliable and you can really rely on that. But in Tucson, our public transportation isn't really the absolute best, and also it's more in the city limits. So if you're living a little bit outside of city limits, you are going to need a car or a bike, but truly really a car, just with, you know, how far things can be. But that's number 2, is Tucson isn't very walkable friendly for people who are looking to just be car free. Number 3 is it gets hot here. Now, that might not be a super huge surprise to a lot of people, but for someone who's not used to it, and even someone who is used to it, it gets hot. So during the summer months, which are typically mid to end of May, and it can stay well in the hundreds in early October, it's hot. And it's a really dry heat, which means there's not a lot of moisture in the air. So it's harder for a lot of people, again, who aren't used to it, to kind of get used to it and be able to live in it. So AC is your best friend, sunscreen, using a sunshade in your car, and really during those extreme hot months in the summer, staying inside or just finding some activities to really, you know, stay out of the heat, because it can make you dizzy, you can faint, extreme dehydration, because, you know, we're in a desert. So it's dry, it's hot, it feels like it gets hotter every single year because you really don't get used to it. But the great thing is that once, you know, the summertime starts coming to an end, it starts to relax and chill out a little bit in the weather. But that's a huge thing of why a lot of people, they move here, think they can handle the heat, and they really can't. It's uncomfortable for a lot of people. A plus is there's not a lot of humidity. So it's not that extreme humidity plus extreme heat. It's just really extreme heat. So you make sure you wear sunscreen, hydrate, and stay out of the sun. But let's go on to number 4. Number 4 is dry air. Now, speaking of it being hot and, you know, the dryness of it, we don't get a whole lot of rain. And again, we're in a desert. So we do of course get monsoon season and some rainfall here and there, but we're in a drier climate. So that can definitely affect a lot of people with your hair, your skin. I know me personally, I tend to get nosebleeds because I get pretty dry out here. So that's something to keep in mind, is that we don't have a lot of moisture in the air. Of course, when we do have rainfall or the monsoon season, it brings life back to the desert, and that's also one of my favorite smells out here when it rains against the desert floor. It's an amazing smell. We don't get it often though. On an average, Tucson does see around 12 inches of rain yearly, but that can vary. Some years we get a little bit more, some years we get a little bit less. So to keep in mind, and why people sometimes don't like Tucson is the heat, and especially because it's dry. So keep that in mind if you're looking to move here, or if you just absolutely hate it here, why people don't like it. It's very dry, but we're in a desert. So keep that in mind when you're looking. Number 5, we have lack of greenery. And to some people that might be a no-brainer because we're in the desert. But from what I was reading, a lot of people are really used to either the East Coast or the Pacific Northwest, where it's super green and it's a completely different environment and also scenery. But again, we're in a desert, and that's not saying we don't have greenery at all. I mean, of course we have golf courses, there are trees, but we're in a desert climate. So you're gonna see more of those beigey tones, you're gonna see a little bit more, again, dryness, but it's not saying that we don't have any greenery, and especially when we do get those rainfalls that we so love. The desert does bloom and it does get pretty vibrant out here, and especially during springtime. But if it's something that you're used to on the East Coast or Pacific Northwest, we absolutely do not look like that. It's very dry here again, and it's more of, rocks, saguaro cactuses, and it's just not that vibrant green that you see anywhere else. We're in a desert. So I know that's a reason why a lot of people sometimes don't like it here, is just the way that it looks, but it's the climate that we're in and the region that we're in. Number 6, we have homeless population. Now, this is something that I've noticed over the past few years, and I've also kind of noticed it throughout the United States, but definitely in my hometown, I've noticed a big increase in the homeless population. It's definitely a sad epidemic that we're facing, but that's not saying all throughout Tucson. There's kind of, some areas and pockets where they tend to gather, and I've just seen this increase in, past 4-ish years or so, and it's definitely something that I know that our city is trying to improve on, and I'm sure a lot of places are, but it's just something that, has come up a lot, and you see a lot of homeless and camps popping up here and there, and a lot of more extra traffic throughout a lot of the city limits. But I have noticed, and I've even used it myself online on the City of Tucson website, they do have a site where you can report homeless camps and kind of help clean up the neighborhoods a little bit. But it is definitely an ongoing problem that I'm seeing build in the city. And I've also noticed a lot of people mention it in comments and talk about it. So that's definitely a reason why probably a lot of people are either moving out of the city limits or just out of Tucson in general. But I have noticed it throughout the United States as well, but especially just being my hometown and living here, it's definitely increasingly a noticeable problem that is popping up more and more. And lastly, number 7, we have potholes. Now, this is one of, for me personally, the most aggravating thing while driving around is you're driving, you're getting where you need to be, and you hit into a giant pothole. That seems to be almost everywhere throughout Tucson. I tend to find all of the potholes, and I know my tires definitely don't like me for it. But that's something that aggravates me, a lot of my friends, a lot of people in the comments, and just people in general in Tucson. It seems like potholes pop up overnight. And then that falls into how long it can take and how long it takes just road construction in general in Tucson to get done. It tends to lag and take a lot of time, which can be extremely frustrating and can also probably lead into number 1, into the terrible drivers. Our roads sometimes aren't the best here, takes a while to get things done, and the potholes. So that's number 7, and that wraps up our list. Well, that wraps up our video. Now, I get it. Tucson might seem to have a lot of problems, but there's also a lot of really wonderful things about this city and why people do love living here, and also why I've chosen to live here my entire life. Now, there's problems in every city, so I'm not surprised if there's probably a longer list for you of why you might absolutely hate Tucson, but I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why people don't like living other places as well. If you'd like to talk about it, or if you'd like to talk about anything real estate in general about Tucson, or have questions about Tucson, I'm more than happy to talk with you. You can text, call, or email me, and I'd love to help. Have a great day.